Guess this doesn't quite cut it.
Vroom vroom, DMC fans, with Devil May Cry 5 live and in the wild, the hype train has officially left the station. Before we turn our focus in the direction of a new hot piece of booty, we've got the first Dante Nero demon buddy drama to contend with 1 and 3 being phenomenal experiences and 2 being, yeah. I had hoped the pattern of volatility wouldn't lead to a letdown in the 4th installment. I'm happy to say that the jump to the new generation did a lot of favors to the franchise. The graphical and technological bump were a breath of fresh air, and the new added character added a nice spice to the DMC recipe. With Nero and Dante tag teaming a whole new horde of demons, we've got loads of new bosses to rank. Without further ado, let's kick things off with the worst battle since Infected Chopper. Number 8, Saviour. The only thing needing saving after this boss will be your sanity. Leaping through the sky like a rabbit trying to pop the crystal pimples of this stone automaton is about as pleasurable as going 100 miles per hour on a slip and slide made of sandpaper. You have to bait the kung fu, then scamper up and give the crystals the old fuck you. You can hit a few with your guns, and if that doesn't suffice, stun the oaf with a cannon and destroy the remainder, with the exception of the chest, that is. That's where phase 2 comes in. Take all of his previous attacks, add in a comically easy to dodge Apocalypse laser, and then spend 10 minutes watching your finger turn to dust as you mash square 1,000 times over. Just when you thought Devil May Cry has abandoned gunslinging grind fest, the savior of bullshit swings in, forcing this upon you. Shoot, 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 shoot! Your only chance in melee is to take advantage of certain platforms that have a moderate chance of him popping up for a short time and allowing you to smack that chest. But even then it's inconsistent and often leaves you forced to fire away aimlessly. The boss himself will keep attacking the whole way, and you need very precise dodges for some of his attacks considering his gargantuan hitboxes. You know, a wonderful problem for an endurance fight. But you do have the option of using bounces to get away, but then you have less time to shoot for damage. So pick your poison. Be bored or be ballsy. That's the problem. This boss is straight up tedious. It's one step above the chopper from DMC2 in that it at least has a solid variety of attacks and the setting is more interesting. You could also say it has story stakes, what with Nero being stuck inside, but honestly, I wanted to keep playing as Dante, so I kinda hoped he'd stay stuck in there. Don't get me wrong, playing as Nero was refreshing after 3 straight games as Dante, but that reprieve made me crave Dante's moves, and DMC4 took his playstyle to a whole new level. Switching between styles on the fly is fantastic. Swordmaster allows for more combo flow than I had ever experienced before, and the cooldown on Stinger is broken. I love it. Nero's Buster and its related abilities are great, but Dante is a more natural fit for me. So to summarize, Nero good, Dante great, Saviour is an utter piece of shit that managed to give me flashbacks to one of the worst bosses I've ever faced. What an awful piece of shit. Number 7, Burial. For such a visually striking boss, his bark is much louder than his bite. A large reason for this is the small town setting reminiscent of an old western flick. As Burial lumbers around the arena, he'll smash through all the buildings, uncovering enough health orbs to outlast him 3 times over. This alleviated any need for me to employ dodges and let me throw caution to the wind and strike hastily with a well-placed triangle, 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 and the occasional delayed triangle, if I'm feeling particularly fancy. He does have some harsh attacks, mostly varied sword swipes, a fire AoE, and later fire pillars a la Phantom. These come harder and faster as his health drops, so those orbs really are a lifesaver if you're taking too much punishment. That's what bogs this fight down though. It should be easier and forgiving considering how early on it is in the game, but it also shouldn't feel mindless. I was excited when I got to face him again as Dante, but thanks to his incredible flow as Swordmaster, it was over before I even got a chance to notice if anything was different. I don't believe anything was anyway. As it stands, he's style over substance, but suffices for an adequate appetizer for what's to come. And at least it gives us one of the best cutscenes since...
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
Just watch.
We're all satisfied.
Man, Dante is really having a ball for the entirety of DMC4, and I love every second of it. Number 6, Agnes. Imagine a stuttering, cowardly, and evil Alex Louise Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist and you've got Agnes. Well, not always cowardly.
You question my command.
Yes!
Damn, quite the cojones, buddy, which is a proper prelude to his first fight. And by him, I mean a glass wall. And by glass wall, I mean ass wall. All it is swords flying around a containment room. You use snatch to grab and throw them at the glass. Throw enough and you win, that's it. The swords fly at you a few different ways and Agnes will electrify the room every now and again, but all it takes to dodge it is stand in the center of the room after a huge tell. Straightforward and boring. His 2 later fights, one with Nero and one with Dante, are largely the same, the only difference being a priceless musical number between Agnes Agnes and Dante that is one of the highlights of the game. The fight with the B-Man, on the other hand, is merely okay. He'll fly around and summon swords for Nero and doggos for Dante. Other than that, it's mostly range magic and chasing him for the beatdown. Every now and again he'll wind up for a big health-stealing attack, but stunning him out of it in time once you know what to listen for is a cinch. Even if it isn't an intricate battle, it's still satisfying to beat down the captor of Kyrie with Nero and do a song and dance with Dante. That said, the containment room is awful enough to be considered for contention with the Saviour, stopping him from reaching higher heights on this list.
And the rest is silence.
Number 5, Bale and Dagon. Bale and Dagon, the toads for Nero and Dante respectively, are a solid step up in quality. The fight starts off with great bait. These glowing waifus are the anglers to a toadfish that wants to swallow you whole. If he does, prepare for quite the HP loss. I was genuinely surprised when the toad came in for the first time, expecting this to be a 2-on-1 fairy duel. Though in hindsight it is pretty obvious when you consider the size of the arena and the anglerfish model. These toads have an impressively large HP bar, which works perfectly alongside his different range and lunging attacks that require different types of dodging from you, respectively. I found it best to keep pace with him as he jumps away and try to stick to his side as much as possible. He'll bounce back and forth between dangling the fairies and taking you on himself, which keeps both fresh and works well with them both taking overall damage for the boss. Eventually he'll reach a second phase and get much more aggressive, especially with his chomps. Between that, the phase swaps, and the length of the battle thanks to his HP, the battle grows more intense as it goes on. To your advantage, you get a stun that allows you to wail on him like crazy for a while if you're aggressive enough. This boss isn't any crazy concept, but its length, variety in attacks and phases, and relatively easy to dodge but high damaging moves makes for a brutally awesome early game fight. As for Dante, he seriously wrecks house. The only threat was being swallowed while I was unleashing stingers and swordmaster combos, to which you can use a DT to pop out of his mouth instantly. I feel like can't emphasize enough that swordmaster is the shit. As for Bale and Dagon, they are solidly average bosses that are elevated a bit due to their early placement in the game when you're feeling hungry for a quality boss. Number 4, Echidna. Just as Bale is a breath of fresh air for the first quality boss, Echidna is a palate cleanser after the awful containment room battle. Before we get into it, what voice would you expect this monster to have, if at all?
Fry some seeds on the side!
Nope, definitely not that. Turns out there's a babe on the inside. The fight itself is actually pretty great. She moves around a ton, but has attacks that keep her stationary, giving you time to beat on her. Even then, you can't attack aimlessly because she'll throw some close range melee in periodically. Where she falls a bit is leaving herself weirdly defenseless while giving birth to monsters you can tear in half with a single buster attack. And this lets you rack up style ridiculously quick. It's a nice bonus, and it's a great time to attack her anyway. The only attack I had trouble dodging was her charge, but it didn't matter too much. With Devil Trigger now at our disposal for Nero, we can unleash more dramatic damage and recover HP for the hits we take. When she reaches the tail end of her own HP, she becomes enraged and starts unleashing a lot of attacks that have vine-like whips. They can be challenging to dodge, but it's a good balance considering she leaves herself wide open otherwise. Overall, it's a great fight. I even felt like it was one that I'd like to do again sometime because it seemed to have deeper layers than anything thus far. And I got that chance as Dante. Though at that point with a lot of the upgrades unlocked, she was merely child's play. Plus it was easier going in knowing what attacks to expect. But it was still solid design and a great boss to beat down. That, and it's always enjoyable to watch Dante as a kid on a playground when he gets a new toy. Number 3, Angelo Credo. Taking the long walk off slightly reminiscent of the trek to the top of the tower to see Virgil in DMC3, you reach Credo. This guy has been pretty meh personality-wise so far, but I like the thought that he will be the captain of the Holy Angelic Knights, not to mention there are stakes here with Nero obviously not wanting to kill the brother of his girlfriend. It's not only the introduction, the battle itself in some ways reminds me of the first Virgil fight in DMC3, starting with there never being an opportunity to wail on him endlessly. Credo has a few different combos and ranged attacks that all have punishable windows, but even if you dodge perfectly, it'll only allow you to get a few hits in. I've never been great with the dodge roll being mapped to holding lock on, so I mostly jumped around his attacks and then followed up. It lasts for quite some time thanks to your inability to unload for long periods of time, making the battle more fierce as it continues. Near the end, like most bosses, he gets longer combos and scarier attacks, but I didn't have much trouble in handling it. Even so, it was still plenty of fun. He's like a less punishing version of Virgil in that he won't counter you, teleport too much, and gives you generous timing on your attack opportunities.
Nero is a demon.
You say as you're holding out a demonic sword larger than the size of that girl. It doesn't really matter. Nero wants that ass and they're holding her hostage, so you and Credo set the fight aside for the time being to save her. You know, I like that Nero is willing to let Credo go. It not only exhibits he has some humanity in not wanting to kill someone who he had previously believed to be his friend, but also that even if he retreats, he can still kick his ass anytime. In the end, his turn on the old man is nice, but it's a bit contrived that it is only based on him getting the sister involved. Basically, as long as you're only slaughtering innocents that I don't care about, go on ahead, no problemo. But the moment you start killing people I like, now it's personal. Shame to see him put down like that. I did appreciate his character a bit more in the end, and his battle is certainly one to remember. Number 2, Sanctus. The big bad in Mission 11? Is it my birthday? It must be, because beating down this arrogant geezer is a real treat. The aerial battle that Agnes tried to provide is amplified here and made far better. He stays up in the air for the entire fight, spawning little bombs around him that you can use to keep up with him as he flies away like a coward. Close the gap and attack him between his magic moves to weaken his shield. That'll give you a generous opportunity to beat him up. After a while, he'll start tossing the bombs at you and use more lethal magic. And eventually, the Saviour gets involved by fisting you. Once you get the timing down, it's not so bad to dodge roll out of. But when you're learning after a lengthy Sanctus fight for the first time, missing a dodge roll severely drains your HP. Doing combos on Sanctus can be challenging when vulnerable since he has a tendency to get knocked back. As a remedy to this, I found that if you can get him stuck in one of the corners of the arena, you can unload without worry. I love the fight itself, though it's a bit unsatisfying to completely destroy him in battle and then have him overpower you anyway in the following cutscene. That's always been an unsatisfying boss trope. It gives an opportunity for Dante to step in though, which as I've mentioned is more than welcome despite my love for Nero. The second fight is the final in the game, and it's pretty much the same battle with a more souped up version of him thanks to having Sparta's sword this time around. The shield breaking is the same, but he'll block and later teleport once it's broken to make knocking him down harder. Other than that, it's mostly the same deal. However, instead of getting fisted by the Saviour when Sanctus reaches low HP, he will instead use Sparta to go on a charging spree every time you break a shield. This attack does absurd damage. Your options are either to dodge and capitalize on the tiniest of windows and knock him down for time to attack, or be a parry god and time a buster right before he lands to grab him. I found knocking him down in this second fight to be really challenging, and playing Dante made me feel a bit rusty jumping back in with Nero. I didn't feel like the challenge was unfair, perhaps with the only caveat being the windows to knock down Sanctus being a smidge too short. Still, the boss is fun enough and has solid changes making him worthy of a final foe the second time around, and the first fight is plenty gratifying in its own right. But there's only one demon-slaying badass that could top off the list. Number 1, Dante. After having this boss work as a literal tutorial, you open the game getting to face off against Dante. That is after he drops in with his standard bombastic introduction by slaying the High Priest and swinging soldiers around on his sword like a skewer. Now, with this being at the very beginning of the game, of course they aren't going to throw anything crazy at you, but all Dante does is shoot and, well, die. I walked up to him and used Buster a few times and it lived up to the name. It absolutely obliterated his health bar. So much so I was surprised when I looked down at his HP and saw the carnage. It's a bit disappointing. I know the fight is meant to be a teaser, show Nero's power and all that, but after facing Virgil and prevailing after incredible difficulty in the last game, having Dante pose such little threat was underwhelming. But I knew this was more of a story piece than an actual fight, and Dante wasn't gonna go all out right away. Boy, was I on the money, because when you finally get to tango with him at the halfway point of the game, it's an entirely different ballgame. Dante employs all the moves you've come to love over the last 3 games. You'll see stingers, helm breakers, the legendary triple triangle wombo combo. He has it all. He'll fly between all of his styles, which can be mind-bending to keep track of, all while you have to stay up close if you don't want to face the wrath of Ebony and Ivory. It's amazing seeing from the other perspective how dominating Dante can be. The windows of opportunity to attack him are incredibly small. My offensive opportunities came from stunning him by activating DT or pairing his moves at the right time, the latter of which was no easy feat. Something I haven't gotten to mention in detail is how much I despise the lock-on change in 3 and 4. Far be it for me to praise 2 for doing something right, but why do they insist on changing the lock-on from a toggle to a held choice that mixes in with other combos you do? When I'm locked on, I like to be able to move as I attack, but I can't do that because directional movement while locked on influences your moves. So jokes aside, if you see me standing around hitting triangle while not locked on, there's your answer. I'm awful at managing lock-on without using directional movement. That and the bosses like Dante leave such small windows that a small triangle combo fits perfectly fine. Then again, like with Virgil, once you have him open to attack, the combo you unleash is up to you as long as you don't give him a moment to recover because he stays stunned. Even so, while this game may be all about style, the name of my game is Victory, and it is delightfully difficult to claim here. But which Devil May Cry 4 boss takes your claim as the best or the worst? Let us know in the comments below. With Devil May Cry 5 out, be sure to subscribe for that ranking and more great gaming content on the horizon. And if you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like. It means a lot to me to know you're enjoying the content. I want to thank you all for watching today. Much love to you, and I'll see you in the next video.